This is a CW Spiral, a podcast run by two Barchies and a Bughead. We're your hosts, Sabrina Reed,
Michael Patterson,
and Reed Gaudens,
bringing you history about the network, the latest news, and in-depth spoiler-filled discussions of some of our favorite shows on the CW. So, I'm excited for this podcast because it's going to be very DC heavy. Like, not planned, but I mean, news rolled in about Superman Legacy and our new Clark Kent / Superman and our new Lois Lane. It's David Cornsweet and Rachel Brosnahan. Like, which is the two frontrunners. Like, everyone on the internet wanted both of them, and we got them, so that's great.
When all of those names came out, they were the two that everyone kind of was behind. And like, as someone who has watched David Cornsweet act before, like I sat in his office 2 or 3 years ago, watched The Politician on this very computer, and it was like, Clark Kent. When I seen him, I'm pretty sure they even had Ben Platt say in that show, "You look like Superman" to him, and the whole internet, they really did. I forgot that until I rewatched a clip earlier on. The whole internet completely agreed, and I feel like from that very moment, the fan favorite Superman casting was born. No one knew if it would ever happen, but like, look at us now, all these years later, and to think it's finally happening. And I know Rachel Brosnahan is esteemed and adored as well, so I can't wait to see what she brings to Lois Lane either. So excited about this pairing.
I am uncharacteristically so excited for this movie now. Like Michael said, I've been down bad for David Cornsweet since the Politician. And it's like, it goes even like beyond the fact that he is classically handsome, looks like Clark Kent. He's so talented. And oh my God, he's the best part in that show, Hollywood, on Netflix. I don't know if anybody, I feel like sometimes I was the only one who watched it.
I watched it.
He was so good at it. He was like the lead, and they buried that lead, the fact that he was the lead of the show. And he was so charming and looked both ways with Lily Reinhart. It's amazing. Like, this is a win for me.
I didn't expect to get very feral after the announcement. I went on a deep dive because I had to update a Superman Legacy post, and I was like, I'm catching a lot of feelings right now about this movie that's not coming out for another 2 years. I need to like slow my pace, but I freaking adore Rachel Brosnahan. Like, when I was talking to you too about I think there were 3 other ladies who were up for 2 other ladies who were up for the role, and I was like, I needed to be Rachel because I need fast talking Lois Lane. Like, she needs to be like witty, fast. Clark can barely keep up, and she's like on to the next one every time. We have had so many versions of Lois, but that's one of my favorite Loises. And I think all of the ones that we've had they have moments where she's like that, but it's not all the way through. And if they do it all the way through, Rachel can do that. I mean, if you've ever seen The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, perfection on Prime Video. And there's a reason why Rachel got that Golden Globe and that Emmy, because she is fantastic from the minute you meet Midge. And I cannot wait until people see her truly let go as Lois Lane. Like, it's just going to be amazing.
Now, look, I'm not going to lie. I've never seen Rachel act. I know who she is, obviously, because I'm somebody who consumes pop culture, regardless if I'm watching the things that people are in. But I'm so excited to get to know her. And like, I have a Prime Video subscription now, guys. So like, maybe I'm going to be watching. We have 2 years. I need to see what the material is going to give when we get to this movie.
I'm so excited about this on both ends, because Sabrina, you picked out Rachel as soon as we said those 3 Lois Lanes. Me and Reed were instantly like David when we saw the Superman castings. Like, this is, aside from Superman and Lois, of course, because we love them very much, this is our dream Superman and Lois Lane casting. This is the spiral Superman and Lois Lane for the big screen. And I just couldn't be more excited about it, because like you guys said, they're both so talented from what they've been in. They're both adored. They were both on the fan favorite casting lists. And I've been following this industry for a long time. We've seen so many fan favorites make it so far, but then not get the role. I'm not sure we've ever been in a position where the fan favorite so long ago ultimately ended up getting the role, particularly with David Cornsweet, because people have been putting him at number 1, number 2, number 3 picks for Clark Kent for years. The opportunity just never presented itself. So it's wild to think now, all these years later, it's actually going to happen. They never work out like a straight line like this, and here we are. I couldn't be more excited for this movie. I really couldn't. And like, this time last week, I was kind of indifferent to another Superman movie, and I really can't wait for it.
Yeah, the superhero
Mhm.
ones never work out as far as the fan casting. I think the one at the top of my mind for our fan casting that had been around for years was Ben Barnes as Darkling. I mean, what is
Oh,
that? 10 years of his career? People were just like, if the Shadow and Bone books are ever made, Ben's got to do it. And I remember when he started aging out of the role, people were like, it's not going to happen. They're like, there's a will and there's a way. And the way was Labor Dugo. It was like, I've been seeing the casting. I've casted him. I'm like, it's my books. They're doing it. I'm closely tied to the project. Ben's going to be in the picture. So now Darkling
and,
is not
and
20
also
something.
like I need Ben Barnes to drop the skincare routine because when I found out how old he is, which is not old at all, but I was like, what? So I'm like, who aged out? He didn't. But like beyond being excited for Superman Legacy, the movie, do you guys know how I can't even just thinking about the press tour. I'm like,
Yes.
feral. Like I
Right?
can't wait for the content, the interviews, the magazine covers, the funny videos of the two of them. I can feel the chemistry, and they haven't even been photographed together yet. I'm so excited.
Oh, especially because of the height difference. He's 6'4", she's 5'3". You know we're gonna have like Apple Box jokes about like this the things they did. Like, how did they
Mhm.
get you in frame, Rachel? And she's gonna be like, well, it was a lot of work and 3 app cards. Like,
And you guys were just off the back of the Flash, where there was absolutely no press tour for multiple reasons. But so yeah, I really can't wait to see DC go full throttle on this and wheel the two of them out to everything, get them on talk shows, red carpets, everything, because this is an exciting new beginning for DC. And I feel like out of the gate so far, they've hit the ground running. Or should I say, they've taken to the skies, up and away, and all that jazz. Yeah, oh, thrilled. It doesn't even describe it.
I do hope, like, with this casting, that we get more on what the plot is going to be about because it
Mhm.
is like the vaguest thing. They're like, oh, we're doing a Superman who's already established, so it's not an origin story, and it's going to be all about truth, justice, and the American way. And it's like, oh, okay, that's not a synopsis. What, what is it going to be about?
Yeah, and then the fact we've Lex rumored to be in it as well. It does feel like maybe it's good to follow a traditional Superman story because Man of Steel tried something different that didn't really work for the Superman character. So maybe it's good to get things out of the way in the more traditional sense. I hope this is lighthearted. I know an interview from David has resurfaced recently where he said that his dream role is Superman and that he loves what Henry Cavill did, but he's excited. He would love to bring a more triumphant and traditional and lighthearted Superman to the big screen. And it's been a long time since we've had that. We see how well it worked on Supergirl. We see how well it works on Superman and Lois. That is who Superman is inherently. So if we can get a movie that even covers half of that, I'd be happy, Bunny.
Yes, I mean,
He's
sorry. Oh, go ahead.
I'm just gonna um elaborate. Like no one is more prepared for this job than him. Like if you've watched any of his interviews, he's just the sweetest guy.
Clark Kent.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, he's gonna. I'm sorry to Henry because Henry has content for Superman and David does not. But David's number 2 for me right now. With of course Tyler being like right at the top. Like I just he's giving what I want Clark Kent to give, and I know people love Henry Cavill's turn as Clark Kent, and there is an audience for what was done in the DCU for his character. I am not that audience, though Henry is lovely on screen. But I definitely going to be a part of David's audience. And I'm already a big fan of Tyler Hagelein's turn as Clark Kent. So if it's in the vein of that, except not giving dad because he won't be a father in the movie, I'm just cannot wait. I do think though with the 2 year gap, there's going to be a lot of expectations. So I hope that it meets that. The actors will, but we need to see if the movie itself does.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the most anticipated movies of the next decade. So I feel like it will have to live up to those expectations. But I mean, we do have people behind the scenes who are at least passionate about these characters and they've made some damn good casting choices already. So, not to do another pun, the sky is the limit right here.
And with that, we should move to the season 3 finale of Superman and Lois, which was jaw-dropping, amazing, epic. Like it's just I couldn't even go to the Gotham Knights series finale. I had to turn the TV off because my mind was just processing what had just happened on our screen. It was one of the best finales I've ever seen on TV, period.
I have no words for that. Like, what did we witness on television? The fact that they pulled this off on television, and it was an unusually structured finale, and we'll get into all of that later. But like they said, we'd be left with an epic cliffhanger, and well, that epic doesn't cover it because that was just out of this world. I'm going to stop with the puns now, I really am. But like wild. We predicted Doomsday might show up. I said that there were rumors, rumblings, which is pretty funny because when Bizarro showed up last season, we were like, is that Doomsday? Could it be Doomsday? But like, none of us could have predicted that kind of journey. I'll gush about it when it comes to my turn later on. But like, what a finale. I have no words. You know how much I like things like jaw dropping and stunning and words like that. Doesn't even cover it.
I mean, speaking of jaw dropping, I think my mouth was agape for like the last 10 minutes because I was like not expecting anything that happened to happen. It was so good. It looked really good too.
I know the budget was reserved really well for the last sequence. And we had action that required like CGI and special effects this season, but they were like, no, we need the top dollar. Yeah.
They spread it out.
They spread it out because they absolutely needed to with how long that 10-minute sequence is. Like just and beautiful, gorgeous.
It was brutal, beautiful. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but the whole time I'm just like, what?
And it just didn't stop because don't get me wrong, I knew you were running out of time in the finale, but when Superman left a Doomsday and then like threw him onto the construction thing and stabbed him through the middle, I was like, is that it? Like, no, that's not it. Surely not. And then when the beat kicked in and you heard the heartbeat and the song started and he looked up, and very on the nose, but a genius choice. The first few lines of the song they chose was nothing seems to kill me, which you see as Doomsday is coming back to life. It's like genius choice there. We've talked about how Doomsday has been a hard villain to get right for a lot of properties before. Smallville had an excellent design, but used him for all of 160 seconds. He was not on screen for long enough. And then Batman versus Superman had him out here looking like a giant CGI Ninja Turtle. That.
I need to Google later.
None of the spikes he's supposed to have. That was genius. And I'm not just talking about the CGI itself, which of course was out of this world, but I will say there were obviously when these CW shows don't have a huge budget. So some of the other shows would sometimes have monsters like that show up in the daylight and it wouldn't work. The lighting choices here, the way they constantly had him in the dark, the way the fire from the barn shaded him, the way he was on the moon, which obviously was not as bright as you'd think. They did an incredible job in covering up for any slight animation weaknesses to make this monster look so realistic. That was movie level. It was genius. It was creative. And it was just jaw-dropping the whole thing.
And when he was impaled on the skyscraper, shook.
Yes, and it like story-wise though, I also like the like juxtaposition parallel of the idea that Superman can be monstrous, like because Clark does that, and I was like, did Clark just kill somebody? Like I know he's a monster at this point, but he killed somebody, and then everybody else. No one backs up from Superman scared like that unless they're on the receiving end of his violence because he's helping people. And so seeing them be that shook about what Superman just did and not knowing how to react to it. And I'm like, well, I mean, he is a giant monster. I mean, like he was like, I understand the method.
I'm on your side, Clark. I'm on your side.
Right? But they were backing up. And then I was like, then there's this great pause. They did it excellent with pacing in that scene because you do have to sit with Clark just killed someone. And then, like you said, the beat comes in and Doomsday just shimmies his way on up from being impaled and then is just floating there. Like, yeah, I'm not dead. Now what?
And the fact then that Clark went up to stop him, but he was caught midair by Doomsday, who was flying downwards and then took him underground. They didn't have an awful lot of time to work with, but they did an incredible job of laying in the gravity. Anyone who's read Superman comics knows that yes, Lex Luthor is his arch enemy, but Doomsday is his mortal enemy. He was literally a Kryptonian beast designed to kill Superman. He cannot die. And in the comics, Doomsday has killed Superman before. I'm pretty sure was it the story, The Death of Superman, was about Doomsday killing him. So there's no way of describing how much gravity the show needed to put behind a villain like that. And they had a lot of them, 10 minutes. And yet somehow in that 10 minutes, they managed to make it sink in. Whether it was the moment when Doomsday and Clark landed in Smallville and John Henry and Jordan, and of course everyone else went to run over, but they're his allies in the field. They went to run over and Clark was like, no, don't. He didn't say anything else. He just said don't, and then had that moment with Lois. And you really felt like Superman not going to get out of this one alive, because we knew they were going to end with a cliffhanger. Thankfully, we know there's a 4th season, but could you have imagined watching that thinking, oh no, he's going to die, and then not have any to follow up? Thankfully, he did come back to life, but he took one hell of a beating, and I think the show really did a great job of highlighting that Doomsday was not to be trifled with.
Okay, so we've reached the portion of the review where I have to ask questions for clarification.
Of course.
In canon. So Lex, just from my understanding, created Doomsday.
Yes.
So is Doomsday's origin story always that he started out as Bizarro?
Mm-mm. No.
So this is a new situation?
Yeah, in the comics, they're two completely different characters, which is why when Bizarro first showed up in that big suit last season, everyone's like, is this Doomsday? And then it was only when you saw Tyler's face, they're like, they're doing Bizarro. Did not think that 1 year later we'd be like, Bizarro's becoming Doomsday. That was a unique interpretation. I do believe, in Batman versus Superman, the movie, Lex also has a hand in creating Doomsday out of Kryptonian technology, and this is a similar kind of thing. So the lore is different depending on what adaptation it is, but yeah, Doomsday and Bizarro were two completely different characters. So the fact they had them morph into one here, nobody saw that coming. It was just insane.
The cassette tapes, I'm so sure anyone around my house was like, is she okay? Because as soon as the cassette tape came up, I was screaming. I was like, yes, yes. This was happening. There was a lot of bouncing, because it's just, they do so great with characterizations. It's a small thing, but seeing that whole, he had, what was it? It was a bag full of cassette tapes ordered.
I was like, what do we have here? I wanted to pause and look because I collect cassette tapes for no reason. But I was like, what do you got?
It looked good. Oh, okay. And he selected one and we went and he's like, let me kill you. And I was like, this is very dark, Lex, but it also fits this music. Bizarro, don't let him kill you. But I guess he was chained up. He didn't really have a choice. But the intensity of that, I'm going to keep shooting you with these things. I'm going to keep killing you because of that. The more I kill you, the stronger you get. And the intimacy of being like, I will be your creator. I will be the one who makes you powerful. I was like, this is a lot of story in 2 minutes, and they're executing it really well with very little dialogue, but a lot of emotion. And the soundtrack was doing a lot.
I didn't realize you just said that. This is giving Frankenstein.
Very true. Very true. And you're right. It was almost like a romanticized kind of bond in that I'm here for you in the way that nobody else can be. They were very close in each other's face. And considering we're talking about Lex Luthor, who doesn't like anything alien related, the fact that he was willing to create this monster just to stop Superman was just, perfectly in character for him, but very powerful moment. And the fact is, Bizarro really, we don't know if Bizarro is really if he's still in there. All we were looking at was a zombified husk that ate rats and apparently people's ears and cows. Yeah, exactly. So we don't know. Cows.
Oh, I missed the towel eating portion of the episode.
Remember, they brought the cow into the train car. But yeah, is Bizarro still there? Is it just a zombified husk? Because even when we did see Doomsday in the end, Superman was like, what has he done to you? He recognized it. I have to say that was unique on the show. The fact that you still had the back to front S on seared into his skin because of obviously all the damage he took. That was incredible because Doomsday doesn't usually have that. But the fact is, Bizarro came back from every death. So that's how he made Doomsday the ultimate killing machine. I'm surprised you didn't think of stabbing him because obviously that's what Clark ended up doing on the building. But when that's the way to make Doomsday unstoppable. You kill him that way and he can't die that way again. So that's what Lex did. He killed him every possible way. That's why when he tried drowning him as well. That's why when Doomsday took Clark into the water, you saw Clark struggling for oxygen, but Doomsday wasn't struggling for oxygen because he'd already been killed that way. So he couldn't be killed again. Now that Clark stabbed him through the building, he can't be killed that way again either. This beast is unstoppable. Yes, Clark can still go toe to toe with him, but he can't subdue him, which is why I think it's incredibly terrifying because we know the Superman has a family. We know that once he finishes his day at work, he goes back home. If you can't do that with an enemy, when does it all end? Because Superman can be killed. It just takes a beast like Doomsday to do it. So I thought ending on that scene, like I said, they had 10 minutes to do that and they pulled it off dramatically well. Incredible.
Is fire in play? Can we burn Bizarro or not Bizarro Doomsday?
I mean, Bizarro works too. It's Bizarrodoom, Super Doom. What do we call him? Uh, I mean, like the
I'm just
fact.
spitballing here. Come on,
Yeah, I
Clark. We
think
can
we
we can come up
could.
with something.
I think in other adaptations we've shown that Doomsday can be killed with kryptonite, or we have to bury him so far under the earth that he just can't crawl back out. He's kind of unstoppable.
I don't
Um,
trust the burying him alive thing.
yeah, he'd get out someday. Superman might be long gone at that stage, but he'd get out someday. But like we could have thrown them into the sun. They were in space after all. We know how sun regenerates Superman. So like, does sun regenerate Doomsday because he's Kryptonian? Wait, if he's Bizarro, then it's the opposite of Clark, because you know the way it was an XK was Bizarro's weakness. He didn't breathe ice; he breathed fire, which is why Doomsday was breathing fire. So like, I assume XK would still work to kill him if that was Bizarro's weakness.
Okay, so I think you might have just figured out season 4 premieres way of getting rid of Doomsday. But
you know, it works.
I mean, it's an amazing way to end a season, though. Very happy that it wasn't a cliffhanger, but I would have kind of been okay because I mean, this is Superman, so I would figure he'd be able to go back to his family, even if someone had to just make a 200,000 word fan fiction, so everyone would be completely satisfied. But like, it was so good. And I think part of that is because first half of the episode is just straight up happiness. It's all joy. Some of it's not earned, but there's a lot of joy in the beginning of the episode. And I just really miss Bitsy Tulloch. I know we say this every season, but it'll be a crime if she does not get an Emmy for her work on in season 3. It was phenomenal. I mean, my goodness. I know there's a lot of controversy around the cancer plotline because a lot of people did not want to see Lois Lane get cancer. And not only just because, that's Lois Lane and you want to be able to see her going through cases and being very present in the more action part of the plots, but also because cancer sucks the air out of the room in a plot. It has to, by its nature. Anytime you have an extreme sickness like this, a disease in the storyline, there's just no way to realistically depict what someone goes through, but only do it, half do it. Every time someone half does it, you get dragged. Yeah, and it's considered to be disrespectful. So they leaned into it, but I felt like they leaned into it in a way in which it wasn't all episode for her. Like, yes, she was sick. Yes, we had opening sequences which were really hard to watch, but the episode would go on and she may be sick, but she's contributing to the plot, or she may be sick, but we're having a very deep conversation about what it means to be the person with the cancer diagnosis, or to be a family member watching your loved one go through cancer. So I thought it was really well done. I think we all have different opinions on that, or different perspectives when it comes to what they wanted to see on screen. But at the end of the day, to me, however you feel about the writing of it, Bitsy acted her behind off. And she did that in this finale too.
Yeah.
Where I approach storylines like this, like, did I want to see this happen to her? No. But, and this isn't just specific to the show or the season, but when there's a show that I like and I'm watching and there's a storyline that I may not have wanted to happen, I'm like, okay, not fully on board, but I'm like, okay, why is this happening? Why is this important? Why are they choosing to do this? And it can be hard to reflect on that and to come at it in that way, because it's so easy to just be like, whatever. But when it's something as important as this one, and you're like, oh man, why are they doing this to her? And in times when I was kind of, because it was a lot to watch, when you get to those points in the season where you're like, oh, it's just heartbreaking. I'm like, okay, why are we doing this? Why is this important for Lois? And I'm not going to answer any of those questions, but that was just something I reflected on a lot this season, instead of just being or expressing any kind of negativity around it, because it's important for somebody watching. So it may not be for me, and that's okay.
Mm. And to further that point, I grew up watching a lot of British soaps which work with agencies to highlight storylines like this, to raise awareness for storylines like this. I'm not unfamiliar with storylines like this because they're constantly on television. When I was younger, and they still are to this day. And I think the reason that they're always done is to raise awareness for what people are going through. And I think Superman and Lois wanted to do that with Lois battling this form of cancer. And you can see from the response online, of course, it's going to get like a divisive response from people who don't want to see their favorite characters go through this, or from people who thought it was too close to home. But there has been an outpouring of a love and appreciation from people who feel seen, who are going through this. And I think that's important. We've seen before the television can be more powerful. It can create more change than politicians. And I do think it's important to tell everybody's story. So to see a character like Lois Lane go through something like this, it will make people feel seen. And I don't think it was done to highlight that she was feeling weak or that she was feeling ill. I think it was done to show her inner strength and how she got through it and how her family dealt with it. And I think that's an important thing to remember. This storyline wasn't done to put Lois down or put Lois in her place. It was to show us her strength and to make other people who appreciate Lois feel seen. And I think between the writing, the sensitive way it was handled, the way it also impacted her family and the writing around that, and of course at the heart of it, Bitsy Tulloch's performance, I thought they did a bang up job of it. And I don't want to see it dragged for the wrong reasons. Of course, it's going to be too much for people, and I completely respect that. But it raised awareness about something that maybe a lot of people aren't aware of and don't talk about enough. And I did want to appreciate that before the season's finished and we finished discussing it.
And I think it's important too for a show like this, a superhero show that's grounded in so much reality beyond the superhero stuff. Like it's an important thing for their family. And it reminded me a lot of the show Parenthood, and the spoiler if anybody hasn't watched this show, but it's been off the air for almost 10 years. So I feel like the statute of limitations is up. But in season 4, when Christina got breast cancer, in the scene, I'm going on a tangent here, but I have a point, I think. The scene where she tells her entire extended family what she's going through was an important moment for a show that's about family. And I think it's similar here. Like, it was as equally well done and well acted. Monica Potter was amazing in Parenthood during her character's breast cancer storyline. And I would never have expected to see that kind of storyline handled in the way that it was in a superhero show.
Mm-hmm. And I do
not to put down superhero shows, but it's just not what I'm expecting.
Well, yeah, because generally, they are about the ability to be an active hero. Like, you are someone who is combating a villain, and that villain typically, has a form. Like, it's not something that is happening inside of you that you don't really have a control over defeating outside of like the medical practices that are available to you at this moment. So I get why it's hard, especially for some people where the show or any superhero drama is escapism. But for me, I felt like they did something that they haven't done with the other real world conditions that people go through in the show, which is they actually talked about it. Like, there are very heavy things happening with the other characters that they never actually explored that much. Like, we know Sarah committed the attempted suicide. It's a plot point in season 1. She's arguing about it with her parents. It came up in season 3 again because Lana was concerned that she was going to be in a dark place again. But we've never actually had an extended exploration of mental health with her. Same with Jordan. You have that opening sequence in the premiere of, like, the series premiere of Superman and Lois, explaining the emotional difference between Jonathan and Jordan, and then it disappears. So, like, in this case, this is like the only time in which they really sat with the ways in which we are dealing with heavy things throughout life. And that it makes you think about your mortality. It makes you think about the things that you wanted to achieve. It also, opens you up in a way to conversations and people that you never had before. So I appreciated, though, that in the finale, the season 3 finale, that Lois, having gone through all of that, having gone through her double mastectomy and had some body issues because of it beforehand and then afterwards, when she had to learn to accept where she is in her body now, for her to be happy through like a consistently happy, like not just through having a loving conversation with those in her life, but the entire way through, with exception to when Clark landed with Doomsday. But the majority of the entire way through, she's happy. Like she's back at it at the Smallville Gazette. RIP to the judge. Sorry about you, but like Lois went to Metropolis. Like we left Smallville. She hadn't done that all season.
And Italy, they took a
in
vacay.
Italy, yeah, right.
That scene was really powerful to me because Lois was being really vulnerable. Like she was scared to. How do I want to word this? I'll just leave it. She was scared to be vulnerable, even though that's her husband. And the way that he looked her in the eyes for like 98% of the time, I don't have words. I'm without words.
Right. There is so much love in Clark and Lois's relationship that was apparent in the previous seasons, but was truly like highlighted in this season. And that culminating full circle moment between them that like is akin to the season 3 premiere. And then them being in that same place, like getting back to that same place emotionally. I was like, okay, work, do it. Because it was beautiful. Thinking about it kind of makes me cry. Like I just get like a little misty about it because I think that is something that people do need to see. You know, like the ways in which illness can affect how you see yourself and affect your relationship, but to also have like representation of that relationship still being strong and having a bond and being able to be vulnerable as the person who was ill, and being also to be vulnerable as the person who has to see your loved one struggling like that, and to get to a place where you want to be intimate with each other again, that you want to have that connection. I don't, who else is doing it like Lois? I don't really know. I don't think there is anybody right now doing it like them. They are, I know I say this like every time they have a good scene, but they are honestly relationship goals. Like it is just like they are the representation of love. I know Barry is the love paragon, but I think we might have changed that if Clark and Lois were actually in the Arrowverse.
Yeah, it's just incredible. Like without doubt, Clark Kent and Lois Lane is one of the greatest couples in comic book movie history. But this representation of them might be the best portrayal we've ever seen. Tyler and Bitsy's chemistry is just incredible. That scene was so beautiful. The love between them, you can just feel in a few short seconds. And of course, it was such a powerful moment for Lois. And one thing I did really appreciate about the finale was that it kind of felt like a premiere. You know, the way in the premiere, everybody's so giddy and happy, coming off the back of summer or whatever it was that made them take the break in the story first. We saw that even in this season premiere, everybody was kind of in a good place. We got to see all of that again. Clark and Lois were ready for a holiday in Italy with the family, and they had that hilarious scene where the boys were like, "How do you know about Tal's Villa in Italy?" And they're like, "From the lawyers, DOD, the lawyers at the DOD." That was just hilarious. Like they'd been caught out. I love seeing everyone happy, and it's such a weird feeling to see it at the start of a finale because you're like, "Oh no, where are we going here?" And of course, we did get there in the end. But like they did such a good job with that I would have watched that finale with Clark and Lois being happy for 40 minutes and not been disappointed. Don't get me wrong, I was raving about Doomsday, but like 40 minutes of them being happy would have been a lovely culmination of the season. And what we got was a strong culmination as well because they deserved those moments to be happy, and it was just so nice to watch.
This was a small detail, but I took note of it. He didn't have his glasses on when they were in Italy.
Yeah.
No.
Isn't that lovely?
Yeah, no. Like the choice there. I don't know how to like describe the choice. Like why I feel like I know the reason why they did that, but I don't know how to put that into words other than to connect back to vulnerability.
Mm-hmm. Wait, okay, I'm gonna ask another question. I didn't consider to know. Does Clark need the glasses, or are they just like a disguise?
They're just
Do we know
disguise.
if they're Oh, no prescription 20. I figured Superman was 2020.
I don't think
Born with LASIK.
I don't think it's ever explained. I think in Supergirl they tried to explain it away that the reason they gave her the glasses was to prevent her X-ray vision from kicking in all the time. So it was like laced with something so that she could be human when she was wearing them. And then so whenever she does the X-ray vision, she goes like that. And you see Clark doing that from time to time as well. But they never really explained whether he benefits from powers in the glasses, whether it dampens his powers or anything. But I don't think it is. You see him speeding off with the glasses on all the time. He runs off here, there, and everywhere. I think it's just for a disguise. And I know in 2023, it's not really a disguise. You're not telling me that the smartest man in the world, Lex Luthor, looks at Clark Kent and is like, he looks completely different from Superman.
You look
But
familiar. Can't put my finger on it.
he like this Clark doesn't even change his hairstyle, because obviously the more traditional Superman had the wee S drop, but the wee curl. But
I know David's gonna have that curl.
he is going to have it, and I can't wait to see it.
Sure.
There is that shot of him from The Politician in the dressing gown, and it's right there. He's I can't wait to see that.
I think, okay, so after all the praise, I do want
I was gonna say, can we start complaining?
Yes, but before we get to how much of a mess the supporting cast storylines were, I do want to say I do have a qualm about the cancer plot, that it's very no, there's no way to put that delicately. It does. She's surrounded by men in a storyline in which she has breast cancer, and they didn't actually they didn't have her around the women, which are, to me, all season. I know I didn't really talk about it in our reviews, but I did not like that. She has Pia, and she has the lady whose name I do not remember. Did we ever actually get her name?
I don't know if they gave her name.
Okay, but there are a decent amount of women on Superman and Lois, and the only person who actually actively had a scene with her about her cancer in a way that was significant and helped Lois open up was Lana all season. Mm-hmm. And I think that was not how they should have handled that. I mean, yes, very powerful that she's with her family and they're going through it, but they're all predominantly men, which means that all of season, the only time that Lois gets to talk about her body and how this is making her feel and how it's changing, she's like disassociating from it, basically, is with Lana. And I felt like Chrissy and her were close enough to be able to talk about that, but Chrissy was busy with feeling miserable in a relationship with Kyle. The Natalie, they gave nothing besides that one moment, that one episode where like John Henry doesn't want her to give her this Earth's Lois her mom's watch. And I felt that wasn't handled well at all in terms of their interactions. His anger and wanting to step back made sense, but they didn't actually give it any nuance to explain that he didn't want to be around Lois because he already lost his wife. And though he knows it's not his wife, she looks exactly like him. And it's like, it would trigger grief again. So you're staying away. But like Natalie wasn't around that much when Lois was going through cancer. What is that? Like, what is that? Mm-hmm. And then like Sarah isn't around that much trying to help. Like, all they did was have Jordan and Sarah be combative.
Let me not speak on Sarah.
On Sarah. Like, I get it.
Let me not speak her name.
Or at least have, like, if she didn't have scenes with Lois just checking out Miss Kent. Actually she'd say Lane, wouldn't she? In any case, she should have been there for Natalie. Natalie and Sarah should have had scenes that were not about boys. And so that they could talk about Lois.
It's an interesting point, because I was reflecting on the other parts of the finale, and I realized that, and this is an observation, I don't really have a strong opinion that I'm going to share. I'm just going to share an observation that Lana's story in the finale was reacting to her ex-husband.
Oh, very much so. Yes, let's get into that.
And then the other half of her story was also dealing with a man, when her story about the mayor was so prominent for the season. And maybe there were threads of that in there that I'm just forgetting. I will cop up to having a bad memory, but like the two big things Lana was up to in this finale were personal romantic things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I want to go hone in on that point. I have said one of my biggest gripes this season has been that the mayor of the town is reacting to everything that's going on around her, and she's not really having any storylines of her own. You go back to the first episode, of course, she reacts to the potentially good news that Lois might be pregnant. The second episode, her and John Henry react to the fact that they're attacked by onomatopoeia. Even the most recent episode, she reacts to Sarah's revelation about Jordan and is like, that is not on. And she reacts to the town being damaged. We haven't got to see her actively involved in any kind of storyline of her own. Of course, she also reacted to Kyle and Chrissy. I really wanted more for her this season. because the show doesn't treat her as one of the Cushings or the town mayor. You saw how important it was to Clark to reveal a secret to her and her alone last season. Lana Lang is a big part of the Superman lore. I feel like she spent all season kind of reacting. And of course, she did the exact same thing in the finale with reacting to Kyle's news and then reacting to John Henry's news. And then, of course, reacting to Kyle's random proposal at the end.
I have information that can lead to the arrest of Kyle Cushing. And that information is that I'm fed up.
I mean, it's generally a mess.
The scene, I want to say second act, where Kyle comes to Lana and reveals the pregnancy. It had to be second act, because first act was them, Chrissy waking up and being in bed, and that whole scene that I tuned out of and found out on Twitter that she's pregnant. But the scene where it's the Cushing family was a full episode. There was so much to unpack between reactions, the information that was announced, Kyle's means of sharing this information with the three women in his life who prior to the season had been the most important to him. I don't know, it was a lot to untangle, and I'm still like untangling who reacted in what way and if that tracks. one person in particular I was surprised at. She never ceases to throw me with how she moves through this series, and I shall not name unless you guys want to say it for me, because I feel like I'm dragging her to the up and down this podcast, and I feel bad.
Oh, well, I'll just say it. Sarah, love her, rebel girl. Reaction did not fit. It felt very much like the plot coming into play and not character when it came to how that was all handled with the Cushings, because very much the theme of the beginning part of the episode is joy. So we cannot have the Cushings upset, even though it would make sense for the Cushings to be upset.
The subject of that scene was on Lana, so it wouldn't make sense for Sarah to feel some type of way about it, because they needed Lana to feel some type of way about it. So Sarah being like giddy excited about it was like, you've flown off the handle about things smaller than this. I have questions. And also her shushing her little sister made me feel vindicated that last week I said she doesn't care about her sister.
It's literally going to bring that up, right?
I felt bad after, because I was like, I'm really on her neck all the time. But I'm like, in that moment, I was like, you're giving me receipts. Like I just said I wasn't going to drag her, and here I am.
But like, what have we learned about Sarah this season?
Nothing.
She didn't come after Superman like I predicted she would, but she spent all season coming after people. And yeah, maybe it's a full circle moment that she didn't really in the finale, but we've seen no character work to suggest that she got to this point on her own. She was not friendly to Chrissy, and that's a fact. They didn't need to be best friends, but of course she escalated things and dragged Chrissy, was angry at Chrissy, put the blame on Chrissy, even though Kyle obviously consensually entered into a relationship with her.
Now wait, to that point, have they done anything after they went to the movies
none
together?
Whatsoever. They haven't shared a single
so they
scene.
Just like, that was like, we did that, they went to the movies, everything's fine. So there has been no, okay, just come on, clear up the fact that she has not reacted to that situation since then.
Not in the slightest. And on the other hand, we know she doesn't care about her sister. So would she be super excited about getting a new a member of the family? I mean, in theory, yes. But like, her reaction was so dulled. Like, it was slight excitement. And that didn't track with Sarah for me. Like you said, rebel girl. She either would have been over the moon about it, or completely the opposite, where she was just there to shush.
I would have expected her to make it about her.
Yeah.
I would have been like, okay, yeah, you're mad, that makes sense. But her being fine about it, I was like, fine. But I'm like, why would I rather see you be mad? That makes more sense to me.
Yeah. And I know last week Jordan Drow was mad, but like, he wasn't wrong when he said, why are you making this about you? I think that has been, I don't know whether the writers did that in a self-aware fashion, but I do think that has been one of the big issues of the season. Sarah reacts based on what it means to her and how it affects her, and doesn't take other people's feelings into account. And considering they literally called her out for that last week in a storyline that Jordan was wrong, so okay, it had to look like it would blow back on Jordan and not Sarah. So how did we get to this point this week when she's totally relaxed, chill?
Yeah.
She is. No, nope.
No.
Keeping that one in the drafts.
I'm gonna unleash a draft. But like I just feel like it would have been more in character for her to roll her eyes instead and go, oh, of course you knocked her up. Like that would be like, I'm not gonna be 50.
She would have said something out of pocket and she would have had to apologize by Act 5. Like that.
And then Sophie would have been like, Sarah instead.
And that's just good, Mom wanted, like, especially if she knew that Lana had wanted another child, but wasn't able to, like, would have went out the mouth. Just upset
like
about
she
it.
would have. She could have been Lana's mouthpiece in that scene. Lana had to do a lot of generous work.
She did. I didn't
constantly
like
this
that.
season. She's constantly having to put on a brave face for the sake of, I'm assuming, her children and her own peace. I don't know.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, when I was watching that scene, I was like, I wish she could say something out of pocket just once to him.
Because the way that he announced this news was so like, why is this not, you not giving her the decency of telling her 1-to-1? You're going to drop this bomb on all three of them at the same time, which it makes sense from a writing standpoint because they had to just keep it moving. They had to keep it moving because this one scene could have played out in an entire episode with multiple character beats of Lana feeling a kind of way and coming around to it, Sarah making it about her. And then we would have gotten the proposal like a couple episodes after we deal with this, but it just all happened very quickly. And I mean, honestly, thank God, because I don't know if I would have been able to sit through episodes of this.
Yeah, well, because they would have done, what would have happened is Chrissy and Kyle would have told them together, or would have been excited and Sarah would have popped up and like, what's happening? And that's how they would have found out. And then you would have Lana charging in the middle of a mayoral crisis, but she has to step away from the office because Sarah came in the room crying.
Be peacemaker, peacekeeper.
I mean, so I guess we should count our blessings that it was like tight. It was like they're gonna get like what 5-minute scenes for exploration, but it leaves Lana to basically, like you guys said, reacting to it. Like so, like we had the attraction with John Henry all season, but the minute she decides to actually act on it happens after she finds out that Kyle truly is moving forward because he's having a child with somebody else.
And then his public proposal, again, she had to react to that. Like, what is that? Not that he needs to tiptoe around her feelings, but like making a public spectacle of it. They deserve to be happy. And so does Lana. I don't know. Kyle's choices, I couldn't, I'm not on board with him in this episode. The way he behaved, it's inherently not wrong, but also inherently not right either.
Yeah, it's quite insensitive. And I think that tracks with his behavior. I feel like maybe he got giddy over the fact that a pregnancy announcement didn't go sideways like he feared it would. So he kind of ran away with it and did too much. But we know Kyle does too much. I mean, it's like Reed said, it's not wrong. It's also not out of character. The minute Kyle does something, you're like, oh yeah, that tracks. But at the same time, you're like, I wish he didn't do that in public so quickly. And like, I feel like it was
self-awareness in the room with us. We need it.
No.
Where is
the ink wasn't even dry. The ink was not dry on the papers. Time moves weirdly in the show. So if they said it only been like 2 months, I'd be like, tracks. That absolutely tracks. That's where we are right now when we just filed the divorce papers and he hasn't been with Chrissy that long.
Also, what he said about Chrissy, I'm like, huh? Like romantic, sure, but I'm like,
that's not what we saw.
I was like, what, did we see this, or we just in the heat of the moment, sir?
She was miserable all season for her choices. But sure.
Literally, the last time we saw them, he was dragging her for not telling her the truth about Superman, and I'm like, come on. Yeah, I haven't been on board with that relationship. We literally said in the premiere, when they shared that scene in the kitchen together, like, know where this is going. I feel like it's just been kind of predictable ever since. They've had every boring, typical, bland beat. They've been miserable. They've been shouting. They've been keeping secrets. And it hasn't exactly been compelling. And I mean, like, the show does compelling stories so well, but this one was just bottom of the heap by the numbers.
A coupling of convenience that went so far off the rails.
Just really and truly, when I watched the sequence, I was like, y'all aren't reading the soap opera allegations in this episode. I see. Like, it's just my goodness. But like, if there was one relationship I wanted to work out, it was Papa Lane, and not necessarily Gretchen, but a relationship period that he wanted to be in. He got to be happy and tell his grandchildren for like 10 seconds that he had found someone. By the way, I love that he called Natalie his granddaughter. We're there, we're here. She's like fully in the circle in the way that she wanted to be. Beautiful.
I was like, oh, he has a girlfriend. He's gonna move away. That makes sense for season 4. And then as soon as they stepped in that alley, I'm like, not quite. But I did have a bone to pick with him because like he got on Clark's back again about Jordan. I'm like, pick one. Like, are you mad? Is Clark not doing enough, or is he doing too much? You gotta decide. Constantly throwing mixed signals at my man, and I'm like, we need some consistency, sir.
I think that's one of those situations where they'd at the time jump work overtime. We did find out it had been 20-something, 30-something days since Lack showed up on the porch. Yeah. So maybe they were trying to get across that Sam had changed his mind, and then he was like, okay, you were right to be hard on Jordan, but this has gone on too long. But I know
anything Clark does, he's like, I'm like, stop. He's doing his best.
The advice, I get he wants to give advice, but you're right, it's always contradictory. It's always the opposite of what Clark's doing, even if he's following that advice. But like, I agree, it was nice to see Sam happy. It was nice to see him at peace, more relaxed. But guys, what if that's the last time we ever see him? Like, just disappeared in the alleyway. You know what I mean?
Everything's gonna happen off screen then,
and we don't know what actually happened. All we know is that they took care of him and that they have his ELT to call Superman. What does take care of him mean?
He'll be presumed dead.
Doing enough though. Don't kill her father.
What happened?
Oh, I said Lois has been doing enough though.
Oh,
Don't kill her father.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Maybe he'll be presumed dead, and then we'll find out like season 4, episode 10. JK, here he is.
Maybe. Well, what I need at least is like an index card with some scratchy writing, like, daughter, I'm fine, or darling, I'm fine. I'm just like, and all like the Hawaiian shirts are gone. he's like, but I'm on the run. I'll contact you later.
Was in early season 2 when he finally retired, they had that scene of him on the green screen water out on the boat, and he was like, I'm having the time of my life. Just do that. They're not low commitment there. I hope that's not the last time we see him. I know Sam's been a bit of a contradictory character, but the multiple generations of Lane add such a family vibe to the show, like Parenthood or something like that. It's going to be hard without him in general, but I don't want to lose him completely, especially not if he's killed off. That would be awful.
Save him, even if it's off screen. Someone go find him. It means, wait, he's the head of the freaking DOD. The U.S. government should be like really launching an investigation.
Season 4 will start with a 6-month time jump. Clark will still be battling Doomsday in space, and we'll still not have found Sam then.
But Clark can't just like, can't he just like listen really hard to see if you can hear him?
Yeah.
Not in space, right? Like he's too far away. I mean, he's on.
Yeah.
What is that? 90 million miles?
when he comes home, I'm assuming Clark's gonna.
Oh, okay, yes.
Yeah. Return home at some point.
Although he couldn't hear Lex throughout those 30 days, even though he was in that train station. Is it soundproof? I don't know. But yeah, unless if they're holding Sam there, maybe he won't find him. I don't know. But it's going to be interesting to see how they write him out, especially with all the supporting characters as well. The fact we got so much attention on them in the season definitely felt like they were working overtime to try and wrap it up. Sorry, this so much attention on them in the season finale. Felt like they were working overtime to wrap their stories up because they didn't get that in the season.
Yeah, there's like you could see how the way these stories go, how they could be written off. Say that quietly.
Yeah, but also it felt weirdly like we were building towards a Metropolis season anyway, though.
Yeah. That was the fans' theory that we'd moved to Metropolis.
I liked it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. But there's an issue with it now because if we move towards Metropolis season, John Henry and Natalie would still be there, and the point is that we need to make the rest of the supporting cast supporting. So it would make sense for the Kents to move to Metropolis to battle Lex and Doomsday if he's still around, but keep the Smallville regulars in Smallville.
That's true. But if they decided to do that, like move them to Metropolis, they might pull a soap opera thing where like someone leaves and they're just always in the basement. So like John Henry would be like, because he has his own workshop. Oh, he's in the workshop. John Henry's working on this. Like, you just don't really see John. Someone just presents them with whatever John's new design is. So you just never see him. I mean, they did that with the Bold and Beautiful. Thurn was in the basement for geez, like 7 years. He's just like, what's there? And he's in the basement. He's working on the designs. Like that was like every time he was brought up.
Are we gonna do that with every character though? That's gonna be the awkward one.
No, Natalie's in class.
Exposition, I hate it.
What did you say, Reed, last few weeks ago? Lana's in Hawaii.
Just a mess. I do. So, okay, season 4 predictions before we move on to Gotham Knights. What do we think we're getting and what do we hope we're getting?
I don't know. Michael, you can have this one.
At the top of the wish list, I hope we get the supporting cast in some kind of role. I know we love to hate them and we hate to love them, but they're an important part of the show, and that's what makes this show different. So I hope we get to see that. It's going to be interesting. We know not the cast's not the only thing getting cut. The budget is getting cut. Now they need that budget more than ever if there's Doomsday on screen. So will Clark kill him very quickly? Will we find out a way to stop him? I feel like we only brought Lex in this season to launch Doomsday. I feel like Lex will be the big bad of season 4 going forward, not Doomsday. So either he'll be in a bunker for the whole season and then finally come back out at the in the final episode or whatever. But I feel like we're going to get the most Superman-centric season yet. We're going to have Superman and Lois Lane battling Lex Luthor, and then a little bit of time for the rest of what makes Superman and Lois special in between. I think that's good. Like Reed said, the whole, like, if it's in more in Metropolis, it gives it more of an exciting, grown-up kind of feel. I hope they do something to make season 4 different in a good way, because it's going to be different maybe in a lot of bad ways. But I feel like this could be the most Superman movie-like season we see yet, and that's quite exciting. I just hope it maintains the heart. It gives Lois a lot to do. It gives the boys a lot to do, and that the supporting characters that do return are used rightly, because we had a lot of them as regulars this season, and they weren't used right. I hope we get to see that in a guest capacity, in a recurring capacity, whatever it may be. But after that finale, I could not be more excited for season 4, and the wait is going to be a painful one.
Very, very painful. Oh my goodness. I have on my wish list what I want, and it's based off this line that Lex said to Clark before Doomsday rocked his whole life. It was he said, "You're a fool in a cape and a dog on a leash." And I was like, "You're trying to say he's Lois's dog?" Like her dog is out of commission because he's on the moon, which would mean he got what he wanted, right? He moved the chess pieces so they can get directly to the queen. I would very much like this to be a battle of wits and like investigation between Lois and Lex. She needs to figure out how to put this man back in jail correctly and fix the mistake she had made, which was again not her fault, which was that he had been in prison for the wrong thing. She needs to pin a crime on him. She needs to get a crime that will be pinned on him that's actually a crime he committed to put this man back into a Supermax.
Yes.
That's what I want. Like I said, I really would love an investigative season. Is the CW good at investigative reporters? No, they don't have a strong track record. But hopefully there's someone in the writer's room who is great at that. And that is what like maybe the first half of the season is about.
Yeah, love that. Lex is Lois's villain, and it's up to her to defeat him. I know he's Superman's arch enemy, but there's a lot riding on this version of Lois and this version of Lex. I hope we can see plenty of that next season.
Fingers crossed. But moving into Gotham, because at least me and Reed didn't out of context watch. Rob Michael has all of the context. So, Michael, we'll start with you. Since you know how the season went, how did you feel about the series finale?
I really enjoyed the series finale of Gotham Knights. I have to say, this show has been a little joy. I didn't expect to like it as much or get attached to the characters as much as I did. And the penultimate episode was fantastic. So I was really hoping the finale would kick things up a notch. I didn't know if I was going to like it when they were imprisoned from the very start. I was like, how are we going to get out of here? Because I will say a lot of the first act was them standing in a jail cell talking. And I was like, the owls are in the house. We need to get a move on. Come on, do something. And we got there in the end. And it did kick into gear. I loved the fight scenes. I loved the whole "we're the Gotham Knights" scene. That was awesome. The Court of Owls proved to be a great villain. And of course, we finally got Two-Face. That's basically everything that happened in the finale in a nutshell. I thought it was a solid way to end the season and an excellent setup for a second season, which makes me very angry we're not getting one. Because it was almost the perfect finale, but there was enough teases in there to make you want to continue the story. And now we're not going to get it. But aside from all of that, it was a great roundup to what has been a pretty solid first season. They were all dragging Gotham Knights in the comments. They weren't willing to give this show a chance, but she shone brighter than they were willing to admit. and I feel like this show has got cult classic written all over it. That's my 2 cents. How have you guys felt about it, watching it out of context?
One of the things I noted that I remembered from the pilot was, they were all in different formations, but they had to come together. And it felt like where they ended up in this episode as a group, a chosen family, whatever you want to call it, felt really earned, even though I had 11 episodes of missing context. I just where they ended up felt very like, okay, yeah, I can see how they have all gotten to this place emotionally and how they feel for each other. That was one of the big things that I noted, especially in the end when they spoiler alert. I don't know. We don't usually talk about the show, so I don't know what we should say or not say. But when they presume Turner dead, the way that they react to that and they're plotting, what they're gonna do next, but then they end up coming back together. It felt like it was really earned, even though I hadn't seen anything. Like it just felt natural and organic, and it didn't feel like out of place for her to be like, Turner would have done this. And I was like, tell him, yeah, that feels right.
For me, I really enjoyed it. Like I knew that through you, Michael, that the show had improved as it was progressing through its season. But I was watching and I was like, wow, it really did improve. I like it was just super solid to honestly really great. I thought that like you read, the rapport was awesome. Like you could really tell that they had spent time developing these relationships that when they're snarking at each other, when there's banter, when um what is that Cullen? Cullen is like, yeah, we know that you're together, and Harper and what's her name? There's not Sophie.
Stephanie.
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 That you do? He's like, yeah. And Connor said the same thing. Turner said the same thing. I just feel like I don't know. I felt like they had really earned where they got in the spot of the series finale, and I really enjoyed the fight sequences too. Having come off started watching FBI, where every time I watch an FBI episode, I'm like, they're really, really floating next to this TV-14 rating. And so watching Gotham Knights, I was like, Gotham Knights is in the same school, I guess, because we're really floating with this TV-14 rating. The severed head that just rolls onto screen, I'm like, okay, not typical to the CW, but I'm not mad at
Is that
it.
the second time that's happened? Or no, that was in
Yes.
the that was in the pilot, right?
Yeah.
Or was that did Superman and Lois do that too?
No, I don't
Mm.
Wait,
think.
I don't know. I feel
No,
like
with the pilot of Gotham Knights ended with the
oh,
talon
okay.
slashing someone's head. Um, yeah,
It's just a lot of violence.
right. Yeah,
Mhm.
I literally said about last week's Nancy Drew when the heads fell. I was like, this isn't real because the show wouldn't do that. Meanwhile, Gotham Knights is out here rolling heads in like bowling balls. Yeah. We like our Batman content edgy. I don't know whether we needed it that edgy, but yeah, the show it definitely felt like it came together like a well-oiled machine. Back to the dynamics, I completely agree. It's been lovely watching them. I think that's been my favorite thing about it. The pilot was like lost in the DC mythology of these people who killed Batman, and you're like, they're teenagers who have no fighting skills. How do you think they killed Batman? The GCPD was stupid. We had to like believe that and then move on. But the fact that they really did come together, they learned how to fight. They grew to be great friends, and then of course the Turner and Duella starting a mini relationship, which is kind of like they kind of just found each other because they were totally themselves around each other, even though she didn't really care about anyone. Of course, there was the ploy on Batman's son and the Joker's daughter getting together. But like they really did become they were like they weren't billed as like star-crossed lovers. We know Turner had a thing for Stephanie throughout most of the season because she was his lifelong best friend. Um, and we knew Duella didn't care about anyone. And then yet by the end of the season, they're all they really care about. They really became one of the most cute dynamics that was really easy to get behind. I love them. I would have watched a whole season of the two of them. Um, and when she was like, "You came back from me," and he was like, "Not offended." That was a line she had said earlier on when they first got together, because he was like, "You're just yourself, and you don't get offended by anyone." And she was like, "No, I don't." And then he was like, "You're so selfish, not offended." He's like, "You're so this, not offended." So it was really like a nice fulfilling moment that he threw "not offended" back at her. Um, Yeah, I really would have loved to have seen a whole season full of just the group dynamics, because that was my favorite part about it. Even if this wasn't a DC show, it wasn't set in Gotham City, and it was just about these random group of heroes in the making. I would have loved every minute of that, and I thought the more Gotham Knights embraced that, and the more it moved away from the Batman mythology, because it was never going to live up to that. The more it moved away from that, the better it got, and I'm glad we got to see a lot of that in the finale, because the characters were what made it for me.
And it was funny too. I love the interrogation scenes. One, it reminded me of that the third Tom Holland movie, which the name is Away from Home. Is it Away Far from Home? Away from Home.
No Way
The
Home.
No Way Home. There we go. Because I think that one starts, where he and his friends are getting interrogated about like him being,
Yeah.
and that reminded me a lot of that, where you have kids being interrogated by the police. And I love the scene with, I think that's either it was Turner. I'm sorry, because this is out of context, I'm like trying to fit names where they're supposed to be, and it's like not working. But there's a scene with one of the teams where the officer is like, "So you were framed for that killing and this killing here, and then she framed you for that one and this one too. Is that what you're trying to tell me? You've just been framed for multiple murders. That's just." And he's like, "Yeah," and she's like, "No, try again. No one's framed this much."
And then when it was at Collins' book, I was like, no, we didn't kill anyone. But then the Talon came after us, so Turner cut his head off, and we had to kill him. And they're like, wait, so there was a murder committed? So funny. But yeah, I feel like, considering you guys were watching out of context, I think that was a good way of catching people up on what happened throughout the season. There are some of these shows that get quite clunky with the exposition, but I thought that was a very good tool to do that, because you did pick up a lot of information very, very quickly. Of course, I know you had previously to like lead you in as well, but like, uh, this was the moment they've been avoiding all season. They did not want to get caught by the cops, and they finally got caught by the cops. And then the Court of Owls came after them in the GCPD. So it was very fulfilling. And then that police officer that Colin ultimately saved, he was one of their dynamics throughout the whole season was that Colin was masquerading as a police officer, and him and that officer kind of formed a bond. So now when that officer was like, wait, he's been a fugitive this whole time and not a real police officer, then Colin had to step up and save him. We got a lot of great dynamics like that. And of course, Carrie Kelly, aka Robin, and her mom, that was another important one this season as well. And you saw in the end, she finally accepted her being Robin. She finally accepted that she was a vigilante and that Gotham needs a hero in the wake of Batman's absence. So it did come together really, really well. That fight scene was incredible. And then, of course, the fact that they all had to work together to defuse the bombs. Like, would Duella really be willing to save herself, or sacrifice herself to save the city? And then the team had to have faith in her. That's very Batman, having the faith in the people. We saw that in the Dark Knight, where Batman had the faith in the people even when the gun was pointed to their head. Yeah, I really, really loved it. I really loved the characters. I really loved how the finale played out, and that it was a good way of defeating the Court of Owls. I also thought it was a solid adaptation of the Court of Owls, because they all were ultimately the big villain that the show was trying to keep a surprise in the end, and it really came together. The other big villain that was in the finale, of course, was Two-Face. And I do want to talk a little bit about that. I remember on this podcast when we first saw that Duella was announced, and we said that the character is called the Joker's daughter. I went on a bit of a rant saying, well, in the comics, she shows up as the Joker's daughter, then she's the Riddler's daughter, then she's somebody else's daughter, and it turns out in the end she's actually Two-Face's daughter. And in the end, that's exactly what we got, because she was Harvey Dent's daughter. She was a secret daughter. What did you guys make of Harvey Dent? Because I know we did say in the premiere he was kind of bland. He didn't have much to do. And now we get to see both sides of Harvey before he ultimately became Two-Face. What did we make of that?
Was that the first time?
The first time you saw him as Two-Face?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. He's had the internal demonic personality in his head, but that's the first time we've ever seen him come out. Yeah, and then he got the face burnt. Yes.
I don't really have any big notable thoughts.
Oh, okay. For me, I was like, he is more than beautiful wool coats. Because I believe when we did the review for the premiere, I was like, I don't know, I'm not feeling it, but he had some lovely coats, and so and so now I'm like, oh, I really enjoyed the sequences between Harvey and Duella. Because it's out of context, I was like, did he earn that dad scream from her when she's? I was like, didn't she just find out? I feel like we're doing a bit too much, but time was ticking. She was attached to Bob. Maybe the emotion is what got her there, but I thought it was Interesting. I think Misha Collins did a really good job of that switch. I didn't quite, I loved how, what does she say? Was I'm just gonna play a piano, like I'm gonna hit a right key and then you're gonna turn.
Mhm.
Is that what you're saying? And he's like, no, I can just close my eyes and do it. And I was like, wait, whoa, hold it. Did this get this get said in previous episodes? You mean you can? He closed his eyes and he hummed for a bit, and then there Two Face was.
That was so confusing to me. Like even in context, that was so bizarre because Harvey found out that he has this personality disorder and this evil twin inside his head, and he took an overdose of a medication at one point so that he could have like a dream where he interacted with his other half, because that was the only way the two of them could be in the same place at the same time. And Harvey literally killed his other half. So then when he was like to do, I can just close my eyes and he can come out, I was like, wait, I thought he was dead. Obviously, I knew he was going to turn into Two-Face at some point, but I was like, where did that come from? But yeah, no, Misha Collins did a great job with the switch because he didn't have an awful lot to do as Harvey in the first episode. But Harvey has really become one of the most compelling parts of the season. So it's a bit predictable they left the Two-Face twist right to the finale because we're not going to get to see him be Two-Face now, and that's hugely disappointing. I feel like that would have gotten more buzz, and it would have been a great way to tell the story because we never got to see that, and we never got to see any main Batman villains in the show before, so that would have been cool. It's disappointing we're not going to get to see it, but the makeup was very convincing. I know some people didn't like the fact that his face was in two colors, but like nevertheless, it was very convincing. It was kind of terrifying,
It
and
was realistic though.
it was
I
very
liked it.
realistic.
Like it's still pink. It's just not like it's not Technicolor, which it didn't
Yeah.
really need to be. I mean, I liked how they did it too, with him getting into the altercation with the lead of the Court of Owls and her just smack. I don't know why that vial of acid was up there, but she just went and smacked him in the face with it. I enjoyed him. I really did. I also like that both of them are now Duella's dad because he pulled a gun on her mom for leaving her like that. And I
Mhm.
was like, so basically she has an unhinged father and she
Yeah.
has a nice, kind one, which fully fits for Duella. It truly does.
Yeah, and it did kind of come together because that Harvey didn't look like he cared about her. He was like, "Hello, kid in the chair, push the button." He didn't have any kind of compassion for her. But then you did see in the end, he did have his own twisted kind of compassion for her. I don't think he would have let her take the rap for that if your woman from the Court of Owls wanted her to. He's odd like that. But again, he's such a unique personality. Most versions of Two-Face have him kind of go a little bonkers after he gets burned. This one took the old animated series one of having him have the split personality before he gets the scars. So then that's kind of like the manifestation of it. And it really paid off really, really well. I would have been so excited to see him in the second season. I'm so angry we won't get to see that.
Yeah, I definitely I hadn't seen anything until this, except for the premiere in episode 2, and I was like, wow, I feel like writing. Like I know they said don't do that, but I did. I felt it. I was like, I'm not gonna hashtag save anything. I wouldn't anyway, even if they hadn't set out that letter. But my goodness, I mean, it was really fantastic. I also have a question. This is my turn to ask about the canon. Was that League of Assassins at the end?
Interesting. I don't think so, but I know why you think it might be. So the person who saved Turner and ultimately trained his parents was called Henri Ducard. And in the comics, Henri Ducard is one of the people who trained Batman, and turned him, was able to allow him to be the great detective that he was, but also the great fighter. We saw all of that. Most people know Henri Ducard from Batman Begins because Liam Neeson, who plays Ra's al Ghul, ultimately takes the name Henri Ducard beforehand before he reveals himself to be Ra's al Ghul. So that's where, as soon as everyone heard that, they were like, "Oh, it's the Batman Begins villain! It's the Batman Begins villain!" But yes, no, in the comics, Henri Ducard he's not part of the League of Assassins. He's completely separate from Ra's al Ghul and the League. But yeah, he also trained Batman in his early days, and the reason Batman parted ways with him was because he was kind of training criminals as well and part of a criminal operation, which is why it would have been so interesting to see him train Turner for season 2. Because my big gripe with this show is that, yes, Turner did fencing in school. He knew how to handle himself with a sword, but like no one taught these kids combat lessons in the way that they should not be that talented. So by this time season 2 came around, they all would have been. We would have had more action. We would have had more fight scenes. And Turner probably would have been a vigilante almost as good as Batman. So it's a shame that we'll not get to see that. And I was ready to riot as well. It was a great scene. It was a perfect series finale, except for that at the end. If Turner had just reunited with the gang and they had the typical, our work isn't done kind of sequence. That would have been a perfect way to end the show. But now we're left wanting more in all the wrong kinds of ways because we're not going to get it.
I know. It feels
I
kind of
still,
Batman season 4.
I still kind of love that ending where it's like the show will go on. They're gonna keep doing stuff. There's no ending. I kind of love that. But it's so unfortunate to see a series that has so much potential, but timing just was not on its side. If this had been on the CW 5 years ago,
Even the year prior.
Yeah, like we could have been on for 6 seasons. Like this would have been a huge show, and I do think it'll age well. I think it'll be that, like Michael said, a cult classic. It'll be the one that still gets brought up in like lists about DC shows 10 years from now. And while I don't really know or think that it would come back in this exact form, I think it's a story that will probably be told again just because they did it well. They did it against all odds, and it seems like it'll have some cult staying power.
Mm-hmm. I could see them doing a comic or something in the future based on that. And the fact they've now adapted Two-Face means it will live on forever. Every time you rank Two-Face adaptations, he'll be part of it.
Michael will make sure of it.
I will. I get a high ranking too. But yeah, it's the little, like Legends of Tomorrow. It became the little show that could. It surprised people. It defied expectations, and it got better the more it moved away from its original concept. And I mean, as a show, it evolved so much in just 13 episodes that you can't really ask for more than that. And I understand why people are asking for more than that. But yeah, it's been an enjoyable journey with Gotham Knights. I wish it had more, but I'm very proud of what it ultimately achieved in the end. People were putting it down. People didn't expect it to be the entertaining show that it was. And after that first trailer, it needed a miracle somewhere along the line.
The trailer wasn't good.
It wasn't. It wasn't.
The show was, though. That's all that matters.
Yeah, exactly. And I do stand by everything we said about the trailer when it was first released. It wasn't a good trailer. It did the exact opposite of what a trailer is supposed to do. It made people not want to watch the show. But I stuck with it and I enjoyed it. The pilot was better than the trailer, and the rest of the series as it progressed, awesome. I couldn't have asked for anything more other than a season 2. But aside from all of that, yeah, Gotham Knights came and it conquered and it had a good time while it did it. And I don't think we could have really asked for anything more as fans than that.
Oh, and they went to Tom Swift's house. I forgot.
They did.
Yes.
That's like the one thing that I was like, I know that house. I knew it from like the stone driveway. I was like, I've seen this before. And then the facade of that, I was like, yeah, we've been here before.
But like that clock that fits Tom Swift, another great short-lived show on CW.
Yeah.
Congrats to Gotham Knights though for proving them wrong, because it really
she really did.
Did what you had to do.
Now we leave the DC universe and we move to Hershey Bay, Maine, which, I'm gonna be real honest with everybody who's listening and watching, the plot was doing its thing. We were not exactly following the plot. Well, a
lot was happening. A lot was going on so quickly.
Yes. So, like, if we don't have the name of the device that honestly, I don't even know how to describe it.
Rundle. No, it's not coming.
That cursed compass stick.
Let's call it that.
Yes.
More syllables, but easier to remember.
Yes. So we don't have the name for the cursed compass stick, and I don't. But we were. So this was not a case of the week. It was. We finally delved fully into why the bodies had become zombies, and what started trying to figure out exactly what is up with all of them being in their, are they before 30? Are they just turning 30? They're all younger than something.
They never made it to 30, I think.
Okay. And so we had the big board, like it's all hands on deck for the Drew crew, and everyone's trying to figure out what's going on. There's some etching on teeth which, by the way, and I know I tweeted this, but I cannot, like, if that was my foot, if I got a tooth in my foot during the investigation, I am no longer investigating.
She needed to go to the emergency room.
Right.
She did.
Like it punctured her foot, and she could have gotten some of that water into the wound. And I know, thankfully, they didn't make anything of it. But me as an adult viewer, I'm like, is she okay? Is her foot okay? Is she gonna get like gangrene or something? I'm like, Bess, are you all right?
They just popped that tooth right out of her foot and we went on. And I was like, no, no, no,
And
no.
it had thick spikes. It
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
messed her up if it was stuck. It was lodged in her foot.
They just
The
it was
pressure
like,
on the wound, anything.
and for them it was a day ending and why? And I'm just like, no, 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 no. Do we need to she could we have antibiotics on deck? What's happening?
Medical attention immediately.
Even if she performed some kind of spell to close the wound.
I know, my goodness.
It's not really like important closure, but like I'm glad that we all kind of like
They should be more serious. Yeah.
I know. But okay, so there's etching on the teeth, and I guess the etching grew onto the teeth, and it somehow is connected to some skulls, Druid skulls. See, this is what I meant. What the plot was plotting. I'm not there with it, but they were in the university
so fast about everything, and I was like, oh, ping pong. I'm trying to listen to you guys, but I'm like zoning out for no reason. But I know there's so much that I missed in these conversations they were having. It's another one of those episodes where they just like drop you in.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that one time I told you guys that I was watching an episode and I was like, I missed an episode, and it was like, no, they just really went. They just dropped us right in the middle of it. That's what this felt like. It was just like, oh, okay, I didn't know we were really starting off on full tilt, full pedal on the gas.
Yeah. And when Nancy said we need a dentist, I was like, aha, I know where this is going. And then we got a nice scene between George and her dad, and it started really nice. And suddenly that exact scene was also the one that just started spouting all this information. I tell you, I blinked and I was like, wait, why are they at the Sea College? What are they looking for? I completely went over my head. I probably should have been paying more attention, but I was kind of hoping we'd get more from the George and her dad scene from that sequence. So I wasn't expecting all the supernatural mumbo jumbo to come at me that quickly. And then suddenly we were at college and they were trying to go into a dark room and look at skulls, which also had the markings on the teeth. Yeah. And then suddenly it became all about the Randall, and this guard suddenly had all this information. Randall, I just said it. I think that's the word.
Well, the closure of the George and Edwin, I almost said Eugene. That story is she gave her $30,000 and she's going to get twice a year teeth cleanings for free. Like that was it, right? Like they kind of found closure.
Yeah, they did. I mean, he showed up and I was like, I don't really want you here, but if you're gonna be here, what are we doing? And then and then it really did start to spiral, and I was like, wait, no, I had a grudge, and now I had to like really pay attention to what Edwin is saying, and what I was not paying attention to what you were saying, and it was a lot of information about how he'd went to college there, I guess, or he'd been to that college before, and he had seen those skulls, which I was like, that's a great memory because I know they had markings on them, but how long ago was that for you? I don't know if I would remember all the things I had saw when I attended college, even if it was in a very creepy room.
Mm-hmm.
But he was also, did y'all feel like he came out of nowhere with the I want to spend time with you thing?
Yeah, it was like, oh, you needed a dental favor while I'm here. And then he got really like intimidated by Ryan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he also wanted to he was like, oh, Nancy too. Like her dad was 18, and I love George being like, what, you want to join a club? You want to start a club?
So was he kind of trying to reach for the fact that like Nancy had a strong relationship with her father who was young, but there was also clearly some friction there. So he thought, oh wait, I can do the same thing with George. Maybe that's where it came from. Because if I recall correctly, he did want to have her in his life, but she didn't want him. That's how it ended the last time, I believe.
Valid.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, like, I don't not buy the fact that he would be like, since I'm here, can we spend some time together? Because he knew she needed him at that moment. But yeah, that was an important storyline. And I feel like it was dictated to by the plot of the episode, if you know what I mean. Yeah. They had to do and be exactly where the plot wanted them to be. And they're like, let's solve this mystery together. Force them into speaking. And of course it happened. And that's normal. These kind of stories do get forced by things like that. But at the same time, I just kind of wanted a little bit more emotional weight. That last scene was kind of brilliant, but it took quite a while to get there, and we were just avoiding it up until that point. Just didn't land for me in the way I think they wanted it to.
Yeah, I mean, stepping back out of it, it is lovely for George in the sense that, like, she will have her father in her life in some capacity, even if she's dictating what that is like. But in both sequences, what happens with George is forced upon her. Like, her dad being there is because they need him, and Nancy is like, we need a dentist. Like, he's coming, whether you want him to come or not. And then you have Bess doing the speed dating so that she can get the money she needs in order to pay for the semester.
By the way, Bess was overcharging because what the hell is $19.99? I would have left so quickly. What?
Did it even come with a meal and a beverage?
She said 2-drink minimum.
Okay, but like, are you serving prawns?
I have no idea. When she said $19.99, I was like, come again?
It better be quality.
I know. I guess she's like, look, we need to get this money fast. And if you are single and you're ready to mingle, come down to the claw. Like, and so that's exactly what they did. But I kind of wish, that there had been more, with exception to her just deciding to take her father's $30,000, which the hesitation there, I know she's prideful, but it's $30,000. And the man was not in your life anyway. Take the money. But I wish she had a little bit more agency in the plot. Since like, she was forced to hang out with her father, which did grow their relationship. She was forced to do the speed dating. Well, yeah, forced to, because Bess did it without telling her. She just arrives in their speed dating shenanigans happening, and she gets money from it. And I mean, it is a way in which she's allowed to be helped by her friends, though that wasn't Nancy's reason for doing anything. Nancy just needed to solve the case, but Bess really wanted to help George. Nancy. Bess is not being team Ace lately, which is interesting to me as the one. She's his platanker, but like, she saw them like not really. It was awkward over there. I love that scene where it's Ace and Nancy talking in the woods, and Bess is right in the middle. She's like, oh, what's that over there? It's awkward. I'm gonna shuffle this way, but I'm still paying attention, and it is awkward over there.
It's an interesting plot point that isn't really overtly mentioned, because she was the agent of mobility for Nancy and Ace. She was like, text her, and then I mean, I'm sure she bugged Nancy about it too, but she really was on Ace's case about it. And now I guess it comes from a place of being a friend, seeing them in pain around each other and being like, how can I fix this? Obviously, them being together isn't an option right now. So let's get Nancy out there, which is clearly the last thing she needs from this episode, at least, because girl was going through it quietly.
No, looked amazing, but
but
she's a mess at the speed dating. Life story just on the table for all.
She called the guy Craig, and he's like, Marcus.
He said it's right on the tag. She just refused to read.
And then we'll pivot it back to that awkward question. What was it? Do you do? I don't even know what.
Paddleboarding.
Yes,
oh wait, do I paddleboard?
I just no reaction.
No, poor Nancy. I think I do agree with you, Reed. I think it is that. I also think I wonder. Bess doesn't have a lot of family. That she feels tight with. Selfishly, are we like, look, he's my platanker, and I love y'all, but I'm not gonna let him die because you want to experiment with this curse. Once we have, because she said to choose someone, she's like, yeah, to go out with someone who is not cursed. And I was like, oh, that's very harsh. Okay. Sure.
But it does feel true to nature with Bess, because she always likes people around her to be happy and fun and have a fun time, whatever. So she distracted them with fun. It's not what Nancy needed, but they were doing it for George or whatever. So it does feel very in character for Bess. I did say I hate when they play her for last, but this is one that I feel really, really works. And at the same time, she does care deeply about her friends. So I understand her not supporting them being together if it would end up in their deaths. We're at that stage where we're like, oh, we had the ultimate stakes. We're not going to do it in case you die. But I'm sure at some point along the line, they'll all be like, let's try it again and see how it goes, because I feel like that's where the story's going. But from a natural standpoint, it feels right for Bess to be like that, because you wouldn't tell your friends to be together if it would result in their deaths. I know you try with this, the Drew crew, they're trying to find a loophole and whatever and work around that, but they're acting like real people at this point in time, and I can appreciate that because they don't want any of them to die. Makes sense.
Moving into that, then the next conversation, it seems like Ace is more mature in love than Nancy is. Because when we started the moment in the scene, she's obviously angry, but she's like, "You're the one who broke my heart." So like, basically, you don't get to be mad. And it's like, he did tell you didn't want to do that when you were having that conversation the first time around. And it's also like, it's be together or die. Like, I just don't like, if you decide to be together, then he's potentially going to die and probably die horribly. So it's not like he just decided to, he didn't string you along and just decide to, he didn't want to be with you anymore. So the entry point into that conversation, I was like, girl, are we high on love right now? Is that what this is? I know you were she's at the table and she was like, how could you just give up on like the best kiss of your life? Like, and I was like, that's not what he gave up on. He gave up on the option of dying for that
A
love.
reading that just came to me in this moment is that, like, yeah, she's obviously heartbroken that she can't be with Ace, but I think there's also a part of her, she had a lot of pride and she failed. She doesn't like failing.
Mm.
There was a failure in being together, and she's not someone who just gives up, and she feels like Ace just gave up when it's like, perhaps the stakes are too high and we need to take a beat and just find a way to be alive. But it goes against her spiritual belief system of giving up. I mean, I don't know if I'm reading too far into it, but that was just when you were saying that, it was just something that came into my head in that scene where she's so like full of anger and desperation still and mad at him for giving up after their failure. But I will say that thinking about that scene between them, regardless of anything else, I think it's one of my favorite kinds of scenes where like they each have their own perspective, their own feelings, both can be valid. And it was like such a successful argument to me. It was such a successful scene also because again, they act so well together, and it was, I think, well written as well, like dialogue wise. That sounded shady. I didn't mean it that way. Just stating the fact. But I think it was, for me, it was a scene that was really successful that I enjoyed watching, and I think it's a kind of the kind of conflict that me as a viewer I can respect if it makes sense to me. And I liked they each had their perspective and they can't agree, but both feel that they're right, and they're like, how do you not see this from where I'm coming from? And I like those kinds of scenes.
And they found common ground in the end. And I think that's why it was so successful because, like you said, Reed, they had valid arguments on either side. And they did meet in the middle at the end because of that powerful scene. Because Nancy didn't like the fact that Ace was working with her as a colleague, and Ace didn't like the fact that Nancy was treating him badly or being angry at him because of the decision he made to save both of their lives. And they found the common ground at the end. And it was such a moving scene. And I like the fact that one of them Nancy went to hug Ace, and then he was like, just don't. It's much easier if we don't. And because we did say, like, what does acting on your feelings entail? What does that include? Any kind of physicality at all? And they're still dancing around that because we don't know the specifications of it. But they covered that so well because Is didn't want the hug because it would have been too painful. Just like he had to get out of the room last week or 2 weeks ago when he said that because it was too painful to be there. He needs time and he needs space. And of course that hurts Nancy. But at the same time, she finally understood why. And it was such a subtle thing. I liked when we cut back and picked the plot back up. When we cut back to the morgue, they were both just sitting there on the phone as though, yes, they had that moment, but they didn't part ways because they found kind of a common ground now. They'll be able to work together now without having animosity between them. So the fact that it cut back to them at the very end when they were in the morgue together, and it just picked up like they were interrupted in any old scene. I thought that was very effective because they're going to have to find a way to work together going forward, and it feels like they have now.
And I'm really going to drive my theory that we're working in thirds with or fourths, 3-episode 4. I don't know, whatever. I've been squeaking about it all season, so if you guys don't know by now, sorry, I can't explain it anymore. But like last week we had like grief avoidance. This week we had conflict sort of like common ground. So I'm like, what is next week going to be? Are we inching toward the next third, which is going to be fourth? It's the fourth, right?
3 by 4. Yeah, yeah. Fourth or quarter, one or the other. Yeah.
Again, I don't know. We're not doing fractions. If you follow me, you follow me. So like, are we inching toward the next phase, which everyone is feels looming over us, is the other love interests? Because Hot Lobster Man has been absent.
I think so. I think if it's not next episode, then it'll be the episode after that. Like if we don't get full blown, we really are leading into our love interest. I think to just go back to the conversation real quick, I think that this scene, and I'm thinking about this now as I listen to both of your opinions, that it told them a lot about themselves.
Yeah.
And how they conceive of love. Because Nancy has a very romantic idolization of what love is supposed to be. I want to know what the bookshelf looks like. Like, girl, how many desperate love stories have you read? Because he's like, he
Romeo
mentioned
and Juliet, I will drink the vial for you.
Yes, it very much was that. And she's like, you die for love. And Ace was like, that's not what love is. Like, love is, and he was angry about it too, like just angry in the hurt sense, like love is choosing to want what's best for somebody,
Exactly.
even if that's not you. And because he doesn't feel like they're good for each other in the sense of the curse, not because they would actually be very toxic in a relationship, but because the curse in itself is a form of toxicity. Like, we cannot be in a relationship in which we cannot actually act on our feelings in any way. And we cannot hold on to the idea that maybe if we break it, we can. Because what if we don't? One, that's painful. Two, it would be really hurtful for either of them to lose one another to death. So he just wants to cut it off, and find a way to be friends again. I did like that Nancy, this episode also establishes, like, I cannot do that with you. Like, I can't, maybe we can, and by the end, she kind of sees a way to which they can differentiate up. But before that, she's like, yeah, comics is what it is. Like, I don't even really want to look at you right now. Like, it's really hard because they consider each other to be the love of their lives.
Hey, I'm with you. Yeah.
Yeah. And that is what it is in the plot. I think we're on record saying that they tend to do a little bit too much with
We need a
Mace
little
in
more
terms of
material.
that.
It's okay to admit that.
Yeah. we just need a little more. I know for some of the fans, they don't. Like, if they're fully here on the page, yes, love each other's lives. But personally,
the material's there, the longing and the passion, it's all there, and it works. It's more earned for some fans than not, and it's fine. It's okay.
Mm-hmm. But taking that as how they feel about one another, if that is the love of your life, then the best thing you can do for that person is let them find love again elsewhere.
It's a hard lesson for Nancy.
It is a hard lesson for Nancy, and I kind of really love that Ace already knows it. And I have no idea if that's just his conceptualization of his parents, because they both come from households in which the love is very apparent in the house, presumably. Now I'm thinking about him and his dad and his mom, and I don't know if we've clearly seen that all together, but let's just assume that that's the case. So that is how that's affected their feelings on love, and I think that's very mature. And I like that he pulled her into the maturity of, we need to be realistic. I don't know. I just enjoyed it.
They enter that argument like, I'm doing this because I love you, and she's like, but I want to do this because I love you, and it's like, well, we have one thing in common. It's just the execution we need to get on board with.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a tough disconnect.
It is, which is why, I know y'all don't want it, but open the door for Tristan. I want to see it. I miss Tristan. I don't.
A little crack.
There's a little crack. He can just whisper through the door to her for a little bit before she closes it. There's no harm in that.
Yeah, I mean, just crack the door. We're not going to let too much air out.
Come on. But so I think it's coming. I do. If the law of fourths is in this season, it's coming.
Yeah.
If anything, I feel like it'll be a lesson in oh, I can love again, but I don't want to. You know what I mean? This doesn't feel the same. And I think that's an okay thing to explore for her. She's young.
Yeah. We've reached the point of acceptance now. So I think we're moving into the distraction era, and then she'll eventually start feeling things and realize I've got this, but this is not what I want before
And
we
we'll
ultimately
ramp
go back.
back up
Exactly.
the final
Exactly.
2/3, fourth. I can't do it.
But we're
It's my
with you.
theory, and it's my theory, and I can't explain it.
But
Okay,
we're
well,
with you, and that's okay.
if we do thirds, then it's no,
It's
is it?
fourths, but the
It's okay.
3 episode chunks is really what's throwing me off.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's 3 episodes, but there's 4 because that's the way that I mathed it. Because I'm not counting the finale. It's 12 episodes, so 3, 3, 3, 3.
Got it. Okay, so law of fourths. That's where we are. Okay.
Yeah.
What else happened in the episode? So we have Nancy being mad at Ryan for reasons for being an artifact collector. I guess maybe potentially just not telling him, telling her, just being gone all the time is what she was angry about. There was no real explanation.
Yeah, I was confused, but I let her have that one. I was like, you know
Mhm.
what? You be mad in peace. I don't need to care about that right now.
But he
He
came out in
mentioned
clutch.
offshore bank accounts and stuff, though. And even though he did come in handy, I was like, what are we up to, Ryan? This sounds sketchy. Like
Yeah.
you're doing this to I don't know. Like he was trying to come off as like the opposite of the glasses, and I'm like, yeah, offshore accounts. You seem like you're in a tricky spot, my guy.
And who are his contacts? Because as like, you've been gone for I don't know how many times in the season so far, but he's like, I just called somebody and we hooked it up, and I was like, whose numbers do you have? I don't remember this being a part of the plot at any point. And
And how
Nancy,
can he like get on the like not to it sounds like I'm dragging him. I'm not. I have questions as a viewer. It seemed like he like got on the dark web and like this is a man who can like barely work an iPhone, I feel like, as rich and like successful as he is. Like he's more of like a smooth talker in person, but like he seems like he's like, what is this? Like he's not like that kind of guy. And I'm like, I want to see Ryan do these things. I want to see it, not just him talking to that woman and getting the device. Like I want to see how he's like logging on to the dark web and like using fake phone accounts, and I don't know. I want to see it.
yeah.
Is this supposed to be one of them moments of growth where you look back and like look where he was, and then you just remember that a year ago he was still Ryan Hudson, and he's experienced all of his growth in the year since. I'm like, well, that's a lot of growth. How did we get there? Um, and I mean, in theory, I'm proud of the character that he feels like kind of like he likes investigating. Could that be how Nancy picked it up in the first place? Is there like the investigation gene in the family? He obviously likes this, and I thought that was a nice moment that the two of them kind of connected over that. He was like, I'm good at this too. And then she kind of backed off and she understood that. And I was like, yeah, that's totally fair. But I know I do agree. I feel like that storyline needs a little bit more, not even what's going on behind the scene, what's going on in front of the scenes, because there's an awful lot of how did he
It
get
came
from
out of
A to
nowhere.
yeah, exactly. How did he get from A to B? Yeah, and I know they've been again, it's only been 30 days since season three, and there was no reference to this in season three. Um, and this is what his big like job that he's been going on, his consultant job he's been going on about. I get the fact that he wants to do it to get one over on the glasses and ultimately take them down. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Where is it going? But aside from where it's going, it feels like where did it come from in the first place? Because they could have done a little bit more.
Yeah, but I guess it's kind of like when maybe I shouldn't be not ragging, but like questioning because somehow Nick has contacts in Ellsworth himself, and then I just let that one rock. Maybe it's because it's Nick and I believed it. But speaking of Nick, we did the Red Sea this episode, which was interesting.
My favorite line in the episode, I think, was an act of Bess.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
It was so good. It was like there's such a little moment, but it was nice seeing Nick, trying to use his relationships in town with that officer. I guess they have a connection now, where he's trying to like get the water tested. Why does no one want to get the water tested? Like, I just please. It is
Mhm.
strange that they don't want to.
Feel like if I was that officer, I wouldn't have immediately called him when the water turned on because, like, plausibly, how would he have done that?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I mean, like, it makes sense in like this, like, obviously, yeah, like it's a coincidence, but I don't know if I would have like connected the dots all the way back to him. He was the one in there earlier, like, we need to turn the water off, and then suddenly it's red. But I don't think I would have been like, you did this, because like How?
I kind of
How
thought
can you
that.
prove that?
I thought Bess was going to get into trouble with the chief, because she's been warned not to do any supernatural things, and then turning the water red is quite apocalyptic. Let's be honest. And I thought when they did the joke of how Bess got her shoe stuck a second time or something, I was like, is she going to leave something behind there for the chief to find and then accuse
Maybe she
Bess of doing
did.
this? But then the chief was in the episode, nothing happened. So who knows? Maybe it's an ongoing storyline. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad they got the water shut off. I just wonder if, like you guys just said, will it come back to bite either one of them too?
I thought that the active best though is so dramatic. Why red? like we there I mean it's like very showy, but it was just like so we just went full tilt biblical for what reason to make sure that they could to be able to test this water. I also love when they give us little nods about Ace being Jewish and we get
Mm.
some like little nuggets about what his household is like. Love that his mom was very over the top with the cedar dinner. The Seder? Is it Seder or Cedar?
Later, I think.
Seder? Okay, with her Seders. I said, yeah, and the frog. I love that they showed us the little frog that's on the table to represent the like.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's I love the little choices that they make in the show. I feel like you could tell that they sit around and they talk very deeply about the things that they want to be in scene that give you little tastes of the characters in their home lives.
Yeah, it
It's
adds a
very
lot of
ace to be
character.
like, it's very ace to be like, here, hold this frog. And I love to see it, like, not to move back into Naceville, but like it was nice to see him still have his personality
Yeah.
amid everything. Because sometimes Nancy can get very like, I don't know, insular and in her head. And even she did have fun parts in the scene, but like to see that Ace is still Ace and quirky and can't help but make weird little jokes and be endearing.
And he's handling it better than her, which is
Mm.
I'm endlessly intrigued by it. I'm not saying it's about degrees of love at all. I don't want anyone to think that. I just think that it's interesting how well he's handling it, which I guess thinking about his characterization throughout the seasons, he's a compartmentalizer. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's just really, unless it's like fracturing his understanding of the world, like it did when he saw when he found out that he has a brother. That one he wasn't quite compartmentalizing as well, but there's a lot of things about Ace. I'm like, you really are someone who just like that happened and he put it in a drawer going forward.
Mm-hmm.
He's an enigma, a man of few words.
Hmm.
Yep.
Words are always funny though.
Too true. He always likes to put his head down and get on with things. Whereas I guess it's because we don't see it from his perspective as much. Whereas we know what Nancy's going through, so we always learn that. But I think that's why Nancy was so intrigued by us in the first place. We don't always know how things inside his head work. So it does seem like he just, like you said, compartmentalizes it and tries to move on for his own mental health. And in a situation like this, you can totally understand that.
Do we know what his birthday is? I would love to know what his sign is. Does anybody know out there in the world? Put it in the comments. I want to know what I need to know Ace's chart immediately.
Okay, before we wrap up, Nancy, we do have to talk about what looked, I don't even know how to describe that thing, but it was white and it was coming to life and it was very creepy in the
A
woods.
Demogorgon?
Demogorgon, that's what I was going to say. What in the Stranger Things?
Yeah, it was different.
Terrifying, actually.
That they were talking about the black door, right? In that scene, and then the monster appeared, or was the black door in the beginning of the episode? I don't know. Was the
They kind of
monster the black
specified
door?
that this they kind of specified that this was the thing, the monster, the thing causing all the problems, which is interesting to me. So is it more than just a beast? Like, it does have a master plan in here? Was it born out of the sludge? I don't really know. It's like, the way in Stranger Things, the Demogorgon was just a sign of what was to come. Is this like a messenger of a greater evil, or is this the big bad itself? Because it's going to be a very interesting choice if the big bad itself is like a bloodthirsty monster. How do they take that down?
Oh, I was getting infant from him. Monstrous infant. Like, not like an actual human infant that got turned, but more like, I was looking down at one point, so I don't actually know how he appeared in the woods. He was just bone cracking a lot. And I was like, ooh, you fresh out of whatever darkness you crawled out of? Because I don't know if that thing can go into that baby. Like, do you have sentience? Because right now what you're giving is, I don't know where I am. And
It looked like
all this
it
fills
ran away
you.
like Gollum, though.
No, it was just like, ooh, what is this? Who are you? Gone. And I was like, okay, well,
Yeah. I have no thoughts about it. You know, what I did like about that scene has nothing to do about the monster. It was just the way that they choreographed it with like they were in a line and they slowly became like turned inward. They had all of their angles covered, but they were like protecting each other the closer they got to each other. But they all, I don't know, I love that. I love that choreographing of their fear and their concern for each other. I like that. Didn't really have anything to do with the monster though.
hats off to Scott Wolf since he was
Just
the
a small.
director.
Oh my God, he killed it in this episode. The framing of Kennedy in the speed dating scene was a great shot.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of good choices.
Yay to him. Like, it really encapsulated the fear in that sequence. I was scared. They were scared. We needed to go home immediately. I did love though that they just didn't run. I was like, y'all have seen so much weirdness that we're just gonna stay here with this thing as it figures itself out.
I wouldn't even gone with them in the first place, so they're braver than me.
No, they're quite lucky, I will say. This is the second time it happened this season when they saw the bodies in the woods, the bodies or the zombies walk the other way. When they seen this creature, they stood and looked at it and it ran off the other way.
The things come in threes. Next time they're not gonna be as lucky.
Yeah, I was like, for being the smart Drew crew, you need to be quicker on your feet. Either run, do something.
It's gonna be Tristan.
Oh no, don't say that.
And it has to be because there's that scene in the trailer where she's clutching someone who has Tristan's hair, but you're not dying tonight, and they're in the woods.
I mean, there is a slight body count each season.
Yeah.
So
the Demogorgon might get him, or at least briefly. Oh.
Sorry to that man.
Oh no. But I think that's I don't think there's anything else in the episode. If there is, I did not retain it. So sorry.
That was a fun discussion of a very interesting episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. We next episode, if there are very important things that we missed, it's gonna be even fun. Or the most fun. But okay, so before we end, I do want to do some manifesting, and those watching and listening, please manifest with us. We've talked extensively, and I believe Reed gave darn near a TED talk about retrospectives in an episode and why we need them. And if there's one that we're really hoping that we get, it's Riverdale. Obviously CW likely is not putting one on, but if they decide to put it, I don't know, Entertainment Tonight, talk to the Riverdale crew. It would be very exciting to be able to have a Riverdale retrospective.
Yeah. The cast has done such a good job doing that for fans on their social media, but like I think it deserves more than a season 7 montage on TikTok, as beautiful as those are for fans. I think we didn't get it for The Flash, which is disappointing. And probably heartbreaking for fans that were there for that near 10-year ride. This is a show that really put the CW on the map in its final era and its last breath. And to see it go out with the ratings that it's getting, and if it does go out without any recognition, like you said, I'm not expecting anything from the network at this point, but I don't know. It just seems like the kind of pop cultural phenomenon that needs to have a period at the end of its sentence and a little bit of a celebration.
This show has kind of maybe been the CW's biggest global hit ever. I know The Flash was the biggest hit for the CW as a network ever, but Riverdale, I'm telling you, it was in the same conversation as Stranger Things when it first launched. And I know that's because of the global Netflix appeal, but it literally became one of the biggest shows in the world. And retroactively, it still is. Yes, a lot of people don't know that it's still on because it kind of fell off a cliff there after the pandemic break. But generally, this has been one of the biggest exports the CW has ever produced, like pop culturally changing phenomenon. Of course it should get some kind of like period, like Reed said. Of course it should get some kind of way to bow out. And the network should be the one doing it, but we're not expecting it. But yeah, some kind of wrap up, because it's been the most strange, bizarre, and yet successful blend of television we've ever had. And it was kind of world changing. So I would like to see some kind of at least acknowledgement of that, even if it's only 30 minutes, 15 minutes. The show deserves some kind of acknowledgement before it bows out for good.
No, please. I mean, the costumes alone, like the behind the scenes footage, the just talking about the comics portions of it, the musicals. I mean, so much happened in its 7 seasons. So for it not to have a retrospective where that's explored and talked about the way the characters changed, I'm so sure Roberto's probably got like sketches of the characters that just have never seen the light of day. Which also to add, this is why I want a coffee table book, like
Yes.
in
Roberto
manifesting that.
honestly deserves it because he has spoken. He speaks at great length about the show, but I think in various interviews, videos, it can get lost. But I think containing it in one video, one book, I want to hear about his inspirations behind the choices that he's made in the show. Like, I just want to. I'm a viewer that loves context. I don't love to just be left to my own devices a lot of the times. And I know there are viewers who like go in with their own perspective, and that's fine for them. But I'm like, I want to hear what the creator, what was he thinking when he made this specific choice? Like, what was the inspiration? Because it can help me metabolize this better.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a show that I think, as much as it speaks for itself and its craziness, I think it does require a little bit of explanation. And I think Roberto deserves that because I feel like there hasn't been a teen show that made this impact since Gossip Girl. And Gossip Girl, as we know, has a legacy that will never die.
Mm.
And I don't want to see Riverdale end up being that show that 15 years from now we're like, oh, do you guys remember Riverdale? That was crazy. We all went through that. Like, I don't want to see it be like forgotten or just dismissed as like some flash in the pan. Like, they were doing some crazy stuff, and how'd they get away with it? Like, I want it to be, I want it to have its moment. It deserves to go out with a bang
Yeah.
beyond its series finale, which I'm sure will be its own situation.
I want to be like 10 years from now, standing in a Books a Million or whatever bookstore is around, hearing teenagers talk about how they just grabbed like their first DVD or whatever thing we'll have back then, that they want to watch the show. I mean, I had that experience with Twilight. There I am, mind my business, looking at the mugs. And I'm hearing like 16-year-old girls talk about, are you watching Twilight tonight? And because you know what, it went on Netflix. And I'm like, it's been 10 years. I know it was because it had just been released back onto Netflix and it blew up because there was a Twilight Renaissance. But it was just fun being like a grown person now to hear two teenagers discussing Twilight and whether or not they were going to read the book or had read the book before. I mean, it's just, we are running out of pop culture moments when it comes to teens because they're moving everything to streaming. Once you move things to streaming, it doesn't have the same resonance, long-standing resonance that people were used to back in the day. Riverdale might be one of the final opportunities for that because of the way that broadcast television is changing. It deserves to be talked about a decade from now, 2 decades from now. It's like it cemented its place. I want that cement to set.
Mm-hmm. It's what it deserves.
It deserves the materials, just like all the old shows used to get. The books, the specials, the reunions, the conversations, everything.
Yes. Okay, Mo, you're at WB, right? You'll talk to them.
Yeah, Mole, from our understanding, you got a promotion, so
just walk down the hallway for us.
Do something.
I know. Okay, well, that ends this episode of the CW Spiral. I'm Sabrina.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Reed.
Thanks, y'all.